We encourage you to think, talk, listen, and learn. We're coming live on the No Static Radio Network, located in Cleveland, Ohio. Body Talk is a program, again, for your mind, body, and soul. We will have the news, topics, and that will have you thinking all day long. To join the Body Talk discussion, please call 216-939-5087. Or if you want to email your questions or comments, you can email them to bodytalkradioprogram@gmail.com. Again, my name is Ayl Bridges, the producer of the show, and nobody but the fabulous Maria. Welcome to Body Talk. Before we even begin, let's congratulate each other. This is Women's History Month, along with the continuation of Black History Year. If you look on the desk, if I may, you'll see two pictures. You'll see a square picture and an oval picture. These are two women that I'm going to somewhat feature this morning for Women's History Month. The square picture is a woman that I was introduced to some 32 years ago. Her name is Clara Morgan. And what's so fabulous about Clara Morgan, she and I would really go at it, and I mean in a positive way. She tested my intellect and I tested hers. We would argue about things, we would discuss things, but we would always depart as friends. One of the things that Clara Morgan taught me, she's a long life East Clevelander. She's also originally from the Auburn, Alabama area, more so the Tuskegee area. And when I had an opportunity to go to Tuskegee and visit her home, and also Tuskegee College, or now University, I was awestruck because one of my, heroes was a gentleman by the name of Dr. George Washington Carver. He has his lab there. But back to Miss Morgan. I would go to Miss Morgan's house and help her work in her yard. And one day I was doing some yard work in the spring and was ringing up all the dead grass, getting her lawn prepared for the spring and summer season. And she comes out with these small, Giant Eagle plastic bags. And I looked at her, I said, I need some bigger bags to put the grass in, the thatch. And she said, no, these are for your feet. And she covered my tennis shoes, put my feet in the bag, tied them up. And to this day, if I'm painting outside or inside, or working in the yard, working in the mud, I always grab the Giant Eagle bags to put on my feet. And it reminds me of Miss Morgan. The other thing that's very impressive about her, she was married. Her husband passed away first, but both of them, outstanding people, and they raised 3 girls and 1 son. And what makes that story impressive in itself, all 4 of them have exceeded in life. There was no excuses. All of them are graduates of Shaw High School. And the one thing that impressed me about all 4 of them, they loved their mother, because this just happens to be Women's History Month. They loved their mother. All of them are long-time and long-term members of East Mount Zion Baptist Church on Euclid Avenue. They're all active in the church. Some of them sing. The two oldest girls in the family, I will say this, they both have beautiful voices. And if they really decided, which is too late in life now, to strike out, they could have had their own group. There's one particular young lady who was the oldest daughter by the name of Janice. She has probably one of the most beautiful tenor voices you ever want to see, ever want to hear. The other thing that's impressive, they all love and take care of each other, but as their mother became ill, they all sacrificed to take care of their mother. And it's something that most of us don't do. They showed that commitment, that dedication, and sacrifice, because their mother's wish was to pass away at home, and they honored that for her. The awful picture is a woman who I hold near and dear to my heart. That's my mom. She meant so much to me. I was fortunate enough to retire early. I had to, because her mandate, her commandment to me was, I don't want to ever, ever go in a nursing home. And I had a position professionally where I traveled all week. I might be gone 10 days, 8 days, or whatever the case might be. So I had to give that up to take care of her. And what struck me about her, as she got progressed in her illness, and I came downstairs one day, and she looked at me, and she said, "Who are you?" My mother had dementia. And I knew not to argue with her. I just said, "Well, Mother, I'm your son." And she said, "No, I don't know you." She said, "So I'll call you Mister." So for the last 3.5 years of her life, that's what she called me, was Mister. But everything we did, when I took her to lunch, took her to her hairdresser's appointments, to doctor's appointments, so we just rode around, and she became a big fan of the lake. She liked to watch sailboats later in her life. Or if we went and played golf, she became an excellent reader of putts when I was playing. But it's one thing she would always say to me at the end of the day, or after even buying a simple ice cream cone or having lunch at the lake. She would say, "Thank you for spending time with me." And just to reminisce, when I was younger, we would sit on the stairs in the house, and she would be, let's say, on the 5th or 6th step, and I would be on the 4th or 5th step, sitting in between her. And we always read the Book of Ruth. And I thought that book was named after her, because her middle name was Ruth. And we read it, and we read it, and we read it. I read it, she read it. And as I got older, of course, I came to find out the book was not written about her, but the qualities of Ruth was my mother. I watched her take care of her parents, both of them, until they both passed away. My grandfather passed away at 99, and my grandmother passed away at 97. And every day she would go over there, prepare their meals, do their laundry, clean their house. She would come home. Of course, at this juncture, I wasn't living at home. And when I would speak to her, she never, ever complained about what she did. So when I retired early to take care of her for 6.5 years, I made a promise to myself that I would never, ever complain about taking care of her. Those are two women in my life that I hold close and dear. And I'll talk about a couple other ones here really quick. The other one is a young lady. She's much younger than I. Her name is Michelle Howard. Michelle Howard, our paths crossed early while I was in the Navy. She was at the Naval Academy as a student. And Michelle is a tiny sister. She's probably about 5 feet, 4 or 5 inches at the most. And it's something that stuck out about Michelle even as a Naval Academy student. I had the opportunity to lecture at the Academy on leadership and management. And before I would go, the Admiral, he would warn me. He said, "Al, I want you to be aware that one of these cadets are going to be the next CNO. And excuse me," he said, "don't piss anybody off." And Michelle just stuck out. She stood out in the class, as short as she was. So her career takes off. She graduates, earns her commission, And she owns several firsts, not only in the Navy, but also in the Department of Defense. Michelle is the first woman, and she's black, she's the first woman to command a Navy combatant ship.
Wow.
The first one. And we're talking about the 90s, so that's not that long ago, okay? The other thing, Michelle was the first 3-star admiral or flag officer in the Department of Defense as a female. She was the first 4-star admiral, flag officer in the Department of Defense. Along the way, before she earned flag rank, and something special about that, before she earned flag rank, she rescued a gentleman by the name of, let's see, Richard Phillips. And you might recognize his name. He was kidnapped by some pirates. And she was in command of the ship that rescued him. The other thing that Michelle stands out, and you can find her pictures, it's on the web. She was in charge of the task force of the battle group that buried bin Laden. And when the reporters came on board of the flagship, and again, her stature, very small lady, very small sister, the reporters said, well, can we talk to the commanding officer, whoever's in charge? And Michelle had on her khaki uniform, baseball cap, with all the thunder and lightning on the bill. And she stood up there and smiled and said, not only are you talking to who's in charge, you're looking at who's in charge. And it's sort of a gasp went out on the bridge of the ship. Some of the other sailors said, damn. And she was the one who buried bin Laden in the ocean. Nobody knows the coordinates but her and maybe about 4 or 5 other people. So it's a big secret. What struck me about Michelle, especially when she was promoted to 3-star, the shoulder boards for a woman are a little bit smaller. And the exchange where you buy your uniforms didn't have women's shoulder boards for 3 stars and 4 stars. So they had to have a special set made just for Michelle. And at they call it a pinning ceremony, a promotion ceremony, her husband was there, her family was there, and the CNO, he struggled to snap them up on her shoulders. And so she said, let me show you how to do this. So she took the shoulder board, snapped it on her. And to this day, if you go to the Navy Exchange or the Air Force or Army, the shoulder boards for women flag officers, which are generals or admirals, are modeled after Michelle Howard. At the point when she earned her 4th star, and those are all nominations from the president, Michelle was moving rather quickly. When she put on her 4th star, that day she was also appointed as the Vice Chief of Naval Operations. And the Vice Chief is the person who runs the day-to-day operations of the Navy. She determines where ships are deployed. She determines who gets promoted. She determines the flag appointments or officers. She was the first woman ever to hold the Vice Chief's position, and she was the first woman across all branches ever to hold any position similar to that. Everybody had hoped that upon the Chief of Naval Operations retirement, that she would fleet up or move up. And she wasn't. She wasn't selected. She kept her 4-star rank, and she moved to be the Commander-in-Chief of the European Navy and African Forces. And that's where she retired. And to this day, Tiny Michelle Howard, who I met as a student at the Naval Academy, serves on several corporate boards. She's also brought back to the Department of Defense for counsel and advice on certain strategic matters and also staffing matters. She also served on the board to rename several of the military installations that were named after Confederate officers. and that's Michelle Howard. The other person I'm going to bring up is Chief Justice, well, she wasn't Chief Justice, excuse me, Associate Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. Sandra Day O'Connor and I met in Washington, D.C. At that time, I was a Navy officer. And she was walking up and down the hall. And I said, and you could see her security detail. One gentleman was at one end of the hall, the other one was at the other end. And she just was wandering between the two of them. I said, well, can I help you? And the one thing I will say when I first met Justice O'Connor, and if you're not aware, she was the first female appointed to the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
She, blonde hair, and her eyes were as blue as the Atlantic Ocean in South Beach. She had on a spring top coat and a purse. And she said, well, I have an appointment. I just have an appointment. I'm a little bit nervous. I said, well, come to my office. And she sat down, and she's digging through her purse. And I said, excuse me, what are you looking for? And she said, I'm looking for my cigarettes. I said, you can't smoke in my office. So she put her purse down, and we started to talk. And the nurse came and grabbed her for her appointment. She said, well, can I leave my coat and purse here? I said, sure you can trust me. So she was gone probably about 45 minutes. She returns. And she said, you're just such a nice young man. I said, well, thank you. And she sat down, she's digging through her purse again, and I said, excuse me, what are you looking for? And she said, I'm looking for a cigarette. I said, I just told you about 45 minutes ago, you can't smoke in my office, nor can you smoke in this hospital. And she said, you're just so difficult. I said, well, thank you. And she said, is there anything I can do for you? I said, yes, it is. And she said, well, what is it? I said, well, I would like a picture of the court. And she said, well, those belong to the Chief Justice. I said, but you're a member of the court. You can get anything you want. So she's digging through her purse again. I said, what are you looking for? She said, I need something to write with. So I take my gold rollerball cross pen out of my pocket and give it to her along with a piece of paper. She asked me for my address. She writes it down. Then she takes and puts my pen in her purse along with the piece of paper. One of the marshals comes in and he says, well, it's time to go, Justice O'Connor. I didn't say anything to her about the pen. And I figured, well, I lost the pen, I'm not going to get my picture of the court. Picture of the court means all the justices seated. About 4 or 5 days later, a big brown envelope arrives at my home, up in the upper left-hand corner. Return address says Supreme Court, Washington, D.C. Envelope's addressed to me. Open it up, it's a picture of the court, and a handwritten note. Thank you for being so nice, blah, blah, blah. Look forward to seeing you again, blah, blah, blah. Signed, Justice O'Connor. Of course, I have that frame. Gave the picture to my daughter, and I write back to her. She writes back to me about a month or so later. I write back to her. Time goes by, I receive a phone call from her administrative assistant. And I said, can I help you? She said, well, you know, the justice must really like you. And I said, why do you say that? She said, she only handwrites the people she likes. If you get a typewritten note, she don't give a damn about you. Her words, not mine. I said, okay. Time goes by. We'd run into each other at different functions in the government. And I received a call from her administrative assistant. And she said, well, I'm sure you heard the justice is in the hospital of Georgetown. She had breast cancer. I said, I heard. She said, she put you on her visitors list. You can go anytime you want. I said, well, if you speak to her, let her know I'll be down there on Friday. Go to Georgetown. Before I go to the hospital and walk around Georgetown, I walk into a chocolatier shop, pick up a big box of chocolates, go into the hospital. Of course, she's in this humongous suite, get cleared by security, and it looked like a flower shop. Beautiful aroma. I walk over to her bed, and she said, Alan. I said, hi, Justice. And I hand her the box of chocolate. She opens it up. She eats a couple pieces, offers me some. And she said, that's why I put you on the list, because I didn't want any more damn flowers. And from that day forward, when she retired from the bench, she invited me to her retirement party at her house in McLean, Virginia. And we became pen pals and buddies, if I may. And I kept in touch with her over the years, let her know, about my mother's illness. And she called me and said, well, prayers to you, success. Then her husband was struck with dementia also. And I called her because I kept her number. I knew where she lived in Arizona. And she retired from the bench. That's actually why she retired, to take care of her husband with her 2 sons. She went to go visit her husband at the nursing home where he was. And he was sitting there with another lady. And what struck her, he didn't remember her or his 2 sons at that time. And he looked at the lady next to him and said, hey, I want to introduce you to my wife. And Justice O'Connor knew not to argue because she understood the disease. And she could see how happy he was. So she just, if I may, played the game with him. And she did it for years until he passed away. As I would sit and talk to Justice O'Connor, she was one who was encouraging me to please go to law school. But she's a Stanford University Law School graduate. Graduated number 3 in the class, if I remember. She was in the same class as Chief Justice Rehnquist at the time. Upon her graduation, number 3 in the class, she did not receive any job offers.
Oh, wow.
Not a one.
Wow.
She returned to Arizona, and her first job, she was a legal secretary. What she did from that point forward, at this time she had passed the bar. Nobody still would hire her. So she decided to run for the Arizona House of Representatives, and she won. She eventually got elected to the bench in Arizona, and that's where President Reagan grabbed her and placed her or nominated her for the Supreme Court. And just a happenstance meeting of a lady walking down the hall, I recognized her. And I can take credit for this. An associate justice who stole my cross rollerball pen. We became friends. And to this day, we still keep in touch. The other, some of them are historical figures. Some of them, as you can see from Miss Morgan or my mom, I'm not saying that you don't have to identify somebody who's famous, whatever that means. Miss Morgan and my mother are famous. Just to return to my mom, she was the long-term school crossing guard at Lee Road in Glendale. She was appointed to that position then by Councilman George White, who was good friends of our family. And my older brother and I, we became school guards at Glendale and Lee Road. So we would walk to school, do our posts, come home for lunch, do our posts. And my mother did that until my older brother and I, who were 18 months apart, went off to Elliott. I can say this, we were never latchkey kids. We would come home, have Campbell's chicken noodle soup for lunch, or chicken and noodle or tomato soup, and some type of sandwich, and go back. And go back to our post, go back to school. And she retired from a subsidiary of Sherwin-Williams called Sprayon, where she worked in quality control. And I just remember her teaching me, my older brother at the time, about commitment and dedication and sacrifice. She stood on that corner in the rain, the snow, and the heat and never complained. And I find it somewhat odd where you have kids today, they won't walk to the end of the driveway to put the trash cans out because it's too cold or it's raining or whatever. Um, we all have sad events in our life. Mm-hmm. And my older brother, he was killed in the Air Force. And when my parents were first notified, my mother thought it was me, because not that I did anything crazy, I was more of the risk taker than he was. And when I arrived home, sat on the bed with her, I never will forget the wail and the cry of a mother who loses a child. Never. And once you hear that, it's something you never want to hear again. Mm. And I have experienced it several times, more so as a Navy officer, knocking on doors, telling parents that their child has been killed in service to their country. And the one thing I'll say for my parents, it was a difficult time in our family. And I saw what losing a child can do to a family, or in some cases an individual. It dramatically impacted my father more so than my mom. She taught me, and especially as she was going through her illness, how to die with dignity and to live with honor. Some of you who don't know me or who do know me, there's one thing that I stand upon, and that's honor. And when you, especially, and I'm going to somewhat cross the line here, when you have elected people in office who lie to you or lie to us, that's the most dishonorable thing you could ever do, because they're supposed to be servants. Mm-hmm. If you elect somebody who assaults somebody, that's even more dishonorable. And for people to say that that didn't happen,
right,
and they attempt to enable that type of behavior, I have no respect for them. And if you watch or listen to the show last week, I had a woman on, Miss Mills, who was assaulted throughout her life, her early life. And the one thing that I will take to my grave is that any man and or woman who puts their hands on another individual, I have no pity for you or what will happen to you. So back to Women's History Month real quick. The other woman that I hold somewhat close is a lady by the name of Dr. Rice, Beverly Rice. She's OBGYN, board certified. And when I say we, Meharry stole her from Southern Illinois University Medical School. And we brought her to Meharry to become the dean and the vice president of medical affairs of the medical college. Dr. Rice is probably one of the most dynamic women. I'm not going to exclude Dr. Bradley, who some of us grew up with in the Lee Harvard area. I'll talk about her next week. But we stole her, and she came to Meharry. And one of the things that's striking about Dr. Rice, not only is she a brilliant physician, she's an outstanding human being. She went out of her way to bring students to Meharry. She did several, if not most, of the interviews for incoming first-year medical students. And I'm not going to mention the gentleman's name. I'll do that again next week. He wanted to attend Meharry. We arranged for him for the interview. he called and he said, I got a problem. I said, what is it? He said, well, my interview was at 9 o'clock and it's 10:30. I said, that's not good. I said, has anybody gone in before you? He said, yes, they have. They've been in there. They come out, they leave. I'm still sitting here. So I called the dean's office and I said, oh, we overlooked them. She calls him in, asks him about 4 or 5 questions. And she said, you have any questions? Of course, he did. And normally the interview process is just, let's say, step 1 or step 2 to be accepted into the college. He's getting up to leave and she said, oh, by the way, don't forget to be here on such and such a day because you've been accepted as a first-year student. And I never will forget when he called, he was in tears. He said, well, they overlooked me. I finally got in about 12:15 and she tells me I'm a first-year student. And congratulations. He went on to, he graduated and he also did a fellowship at in St. Louis, Washington University. He earned his MPH while he was still a medical student. He was published twice. And what made this young man so amazing, along with Dr. Rice's assistance, he established a study group for the students. This is a Cleveland young man. And there's certain exams you have to take outside of your curriculum. And the students were passing the first year licensing requirements, second year, third year, and so forth and so on. And he graduated, and everybody thought that he was going to go into family medicine or neurology. Lo and behold, he takes a residency program at Yale University in psychiatry. And what's astounding about that, it's a six-year residency program. And you just don't find that many black males going into psychiatry. But he continued on his academic path with the encouragement of Dr. Rice. He lands a radio program in the Connecticut area. He lands a podcast. He publishes. And this young man, he'll be finishing his residency program next year. He's probably, if I remember the data correctly, he'll be one of 4 black men graduating with a board certification in psychiatry, all due to Dr. Rice. Dr. Rice ended up departing Meharry. Dr. Maupin, he became the president of Morehouse Medical College.
Oh, wow.
And he brought Dr. Rice to Morehouse. And now she is the president and dean of Morehouse Medical College. That's Dr. Beverly Rice. And you're listening to the Body Talk radio program on No Static Network. If you have any questions or comments, you can call 216-939-5087, or you can email your comments or questions to bodytalkradio@gmail.com. One of the topics or things I left out, and initially the JFK alumni were to appear in this hour, but they had, one of the ladies had something pop up, which is fine. So they're rescheduled for the 21st, if I remember correctly, at the 10 o'clock hour. So going back to the 2 ladies that you see on the desk, and more so my mom, as I progressed in my academic career and also my professional career, my dad was still alive, and all of us were close. I would always come home with either the offer letter, the promotion letter, and I would give them the original. And we would always go to some big fancy restaurant, either my selection or theirs. And I remember one particular time, my mom asked me, she said, well, why do you do this? You don't have to come home and do this. And I said, yes, I do. I owe everything to you and my father for who and what I am to this day. And the passing of my dad I was still the associate dean at Meharry Medical College. And I came home and sat with her. Of course, did the services and stayed here for a while. Came back, and at that juncture, her health was okay. But the one thing that I encourage, especially if you have a woman, a mother, an aunt, or somebody you've modeled your life after, honor them. And I'm gonna borrow the 5 words that remain embedded in me. Thank you for spending time with me. Spend time with those men and women that you want to model your life after, and you honor. And you honor them. You honor them by being an honorable person. Have character and integrity. You're listening to Body Talk. We're going to take a 360-second break, better known as 5 minutes, and we'll be right back with our next guest at noon. Thank you.
Ooh, you don't want me to sit up on one of those things.
Too high for you?
Oh, heck yeah.
We can move the chair over. Is this, Marie, would it be okay?
Give me one quick second.
Yeah.
We'll move the chair over here.
Yeah, I don't sit on bar stools at all.
Believe it or not, I'd rather sit on those.
Really?
Oh, but the chairs are too low.
Okay.
Because, you know, with back problems.
Yeah, one is low and one is high, yep.
As violence happens to you or your family, violence can affect all parts of your lives, sometimes in ways you can't see. Violence can affect the way you eat, sleep, because you lose focus, from anger, afraid, or even use drugs or drinking as a way to escape it. We're here to tell you that violence doesn't have to keep hurting, and you can change your life starting now with help from the Trauma Recovery Center. We want you to take control of your life because today can be the day. The Trauma Recovery Center offers real help for real needs in real time. They offer services for food, clothes, safety, emotional support, and a whole lot more. So listen, don't let violence control you. You can break free, and TRC can help. Give them a call if you're listening. The number's on the screen, 216-644-5487. They will come to you wherever you are. They are free, 24/7, and confidential. They offer real help for real needs in real time. So listen, if you want out and don't know where to start, call the Trauma Recovery Center. The Trauma Recovery Center will help you take back your life after violence starting today. Call today. Get the help you need today. 216-644-5487. The Trauma Recovery Center of Northeast Ohio, also affiliated with the Center for Families and Children. And now back to Ayl Bridges and Body Talk here on your Voice of the Revolution on staticradio.net.
Welcome back. Welcome back to Body Talk this afternoon. Again, we're celebrating Women's History Month and Black History Year. You're listening to Body Talk, a program for your mind, body, and soul. If you have any questions, please Body Talk radio program at gmail.com. Or if you have any comments you'd like to make or questions, you may call area code 216-939-5087. Body Talk is a program for your mind, body, and soul. This afternoon, our afternoon guest on Body Talk during the Small Business Main Street segment is an outstanding young lady by the name of Miss Janet Williams. She's an insurance advisor, broker, who owns her own insurance firm. Welcome to Body Talk, Janet.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, just a couple things for you. Tell the audience, or share with the audience some information about who Janet Williams is.
Oh, wow. Janet Williams is a native of Cleveland and an alumni of JFK High School and also an alumni of Case Western Reserve University. I have one adult son and one grandson that I'm very proud of. I have a passion for my neighborhood, the community, and a passion for our people.
Okay, we're having just a minor technical issue. I'm going to have to ask you that question again until your mic comes up again. You're listening to Body Talk radio program on the No Static Network, and it's a program for your mind, body, and soul. And we encourage you to call in if you have any questions to area code 216-939-5087, or you can email those questions to bodytalkradioprogram@gmail.com. We're just going to take a 2-minute break, if that long, until we get the technical difficulty worked out here.
The headphones going on and off.
Okay. Yeah, you
Still
got us good.
right.
Uh-oh, there it is. Okay. Nothing yet?
Welcome back to Body Talk. I hope excuse us for that little technical glitch there. Our afternoon guest is Miss Janet Williams. She's an insurance professional. She has her own brokerage firm. Welcome to Body Talk, Janet. So let's start over again. Tell us a little bit about Janet Williams.
Okay, Janet Williams is a native of Cleveland, Ohio, and also an alumni of JFK High School and Case Western Reserve. I have an adult son and one grandson, and there's a passion that I have for my community where I live at and for our people.
We're going to talk about your community, let's say at about 5 to 10, probably about closer to 10 to 12 minutes. Tell us what an insurance broker is.
Okay, an insurance broker is someone that actually works for you. And what I mean by that is a broker has the ability to represent several companies. And so their objective is to find the best product that fits the client. So they work for you.
Okay. And what type of products do you carry that you can sell?
Every line of insurance that actually exists today.
So we talk about life insurance.
Talking about life insurance, we're talking about long-term care, we're talking about Medicare, we're talking about under 65 health care, we're talking about homeowners, automobile, commercial. When do you want me to stop?
Well, if you kept talking about insurance, you'd probably be here for the next 6 years.
Exactly.
Let's talk about life insurance. What are the
Alrighty.
two principal forms of life insurance?
Okay, the basic forms, you have term insurance, and then you have what's called whole life insurance.
Okay, now, and I'm not trying to rush you, the difference between term and whole life.
Is the very same difference as buying a house or renting an apartment. When you buy a house, you can leverage that to borrow against. When you rent a house, when you rent a house or an apartment, when you move out, it's over. The term is over.
So term insurance is written for a given time
Period of time.
10 years.
Could be 10 years, it could be 1 year, could be up to 30 actually.
Now, I know I understand each situation can be different.
Yes, it can.
If I'm 20 and I'm working and I'm making $90,000 a year, what would, just generalizing, should I buy whole life insurance or term insurance? I'm single.
All right, so you're a single man, do you plan to get married, and all those kind of questions I'm gonna take you through, but I would recommend whatever fits your purse, really. It's always good to get whole life because you're locking in something that is permanent, just like buying a home, like I said. But many times I have young people come in, they don't want to spend a lot of money in insurance, and I'll give them a term, and I'll give them as much of term coverage as they can stand.
Okay, so I'm coming at you, let's say from a novice perspective. So you would recommend to me based upon what my pocket can bear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so real quick, let's do some terms. I have term life and or whole life. What does it mean if my policy lapses? What does that mean?
Okay, one of the things that I tell people all the time, as I said, what you can bear. Because if you take out a policy, regardless if it's term or whole, and people often come in and say, I want $1 million, and it's gonna cost whatever. If you let your policy lapse and it's term, you just gave away your money. If you have a whole life and it lapses and there's some cash value there, the policy can actually use that cash value to continue that coverage for you for a minute.
Now, can I reinstate a term policy, or if I miss 1 month or 2 months, or?
With a term, it's over. You can reinstate it by rewriting it, getting a whole new policy.
Start all over again.
Mhm.
Okay. And the last life question. Are there policies that I can buy where I do not have to take a physical exam?
Yes, you can, and they cost a mint.
They cost a mint.
They
Okay.
cost a mint because it's sight unseen. The
Okay.
insurance company does not know what they're taking the risk for.
Now, I remember back in my younger days, there was this statement called table writing. What does that mean?
Okay, so that means that you may have a condition that, such as maybe diabetes, you may be overweight, and then what they'll do is say, okay, we're gonna adjust the premium based on this condition.
Okay, so the premium goes up.
It goes up,
So let's move into another arena. You mentioned long-term care.
yes.
So long-term care, and you have to help the audience out here. That used to be called nursing homes.
Correct.
Okay. So long-term care, in parentheses, covers nursing home care. Should I take that out at 70 or should I take it out at 17?
You better take it out early. At 17 might be a little bit too young, but still it's never too young, and I'm gonna say that because the rate, number one, is gonna be lower. Your health is probably gonna be the best that it ever will be. And you can adjust the policy because many of them have some built-in, like cost of living type adjustments for you. At 70, the average person is on 4 medications. 4 medications. So all of that is underwritten, and what that means is they're gonna look at each one of those things and say, well, they're diabetic, so their life's gonna be shorter. They have severe arthritis, which probably means that they're gonna need this coverage sooner than we can get the premiums to pay for what they need. So the better health you're in is at your younger years, and that's the best time to set up any type of insurance, honestly.
And you're listening to the Body Talk Radio program on the No Stack Radio Network. If you have any questions or comments, you can call area code 216-939-5087, or you may email them to bodytalkradioprogram@gmail.com. And before we move on, where is your office located?
My office is located at 301 Columbus Street in Bedford, Ohio, right near the intersection of Northfield and Columbus.
Okay, and how do I or the audience get in touch with you?
You can call 440-232-9041.
Okay, do you have a website or email address?
We do, and my website is under construction.
Caller, welcome to Body Talk. May I have your name and where you're calling from?
Yes, good afternoon. This is Roland once again calling from University Heights. Once again, outstanding show. I have a question for your guests. Maybe this isn't a question that you can answer, but if so, I'm just curious. Why is it that you see mostly in lower income neighborhoods and people of color that we don't have life insurance, and then when the time comes, when it's time for us to leave this planet, those families are put in a bind where they have to go on Facebook or other social medias to put GoFundMe accounts, or I know of a situation which I will remain nameless about it, where a parent passed away, and a couple of years before he passed away, he cashed in his insurance so that when he died, the remaining children had to come up with the money to bury him, and they almost were not able to do so. In fact, they got an extension from the funeral home. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had the money to bury him. So why is it? Is this something that is it cultural? Is it a lack of awareness? What is the reason, in your opinion, that we see this so often, especially in low-income and communities of people of color?
One of the reasons is people don't think that they're ever going to die. They think they're invincible. A lot of people I'll talk to, they'll tell me that their mother, their aunt, or somebody else has coverage on them. Priorities is just basic priorities and getting your basic cares in life in order. And you really need to do that before you venture on into other things. So it's a value. And let me say this real quick, that purchasing insurance is actually purchasing money. So you're right, the poorest people do need to purchase money. And that is when I definitely would give a person a term policy. It's inexpensive, and you can hold on to that until you can do better. But it's a matter of, we don't think anything's gonna happen, or I'm gonna take it all with me. Somebody else is gonna take care of it for me. And I think it's a shame. I've told my own family, do not ask me for money for anybody's funeral.
You have any other questions, Roland? this
You
afternoon?
hung up.
Oh, well, Roland, thank you for the question and thank you for the answer, Janet. You're listening to the Body Talk Radio program on the No Static Network. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to call or go 216-939-5087, or you can email them to bodytalkradioprogram@gmail.com. We have Miss Janet Williams here as our afternoon guest, a professional insurance broker. Still on this life insurance. As a young kid, young kid, that was like a couple of days ago, I remember a debit agent.
Yes.
More so he back in those days, a couple of weeks ago, would knock on people's doors with a book, and you would give him the 50 cents or a dollar, whatever the amount was. And I'm not supposed to mention company's name, but I remember Atlanta Life or Southern Life, or whatever. Do those still exist?
I hope not.
Okay, moving right along.
No, and I'm being honest about that. There was a time that I lived in Connecticut, that's the insurance capital, and I came home to visit, and I was with my sister. Knock, knock, knock on the door. Here comes this guy to collect. And I'm like, what's going on here? And she said, that's my insurance agent. I'm like, hold up, what's going on? Well, here's the thing, and I think that they still do exist to a certain degree. And you're paying 30% more for that person to come and collect your money. Debit agent.
Okay. This is for some of the older listeners, because our demographic for this station skews a little bit older, so it gives them something to reminisce about. I'm going to save the health insurance piece for last.
Okay.
So we're going to go to, I guess you would consider them personal lines, such as homeowners insurance, car insurance, and I know I did this out of order, renters insurance. Okay. What is homeowners insurance?
Okay, a homeowner's policy is a policy that covers your structure, the house that you live in, the roof, all the way down to the foundation, but it also includes your personal property that is within that structure where you lay your head, covers your furniture, clothing, and you name it. They're pretty much all risk policies, and it also has liability attached to it. So what does that mean? If you have a picnic, somebody comes over and they trip over a bunch of cords you had hanging down, and you had to call the ambulance, it's gonna cover that. Yeah, the person ends up in the hospital for however long and they decide to sue you, it's gonna cover that. The liability on your homeowner's insurance actually is worldwide if you're traveling and have an accident.
Okay. Now, you hear or read some terms. Full replacement costs. Now, what does that mean?
Okay, so full replacement cost means that if there is a loss, they're going to, the claims person or claims department is going to make you whole. And what I mean by that, then you're gonna get a new washing machine of today's value. Or if the house were to have a loss, then they're gonna cover it whole and you'll only have your deductible. Now what's required though, is that you cover anywhere from 80% to 100% of the value to start with. So let's say you've got a $200,000 house, and I'm just throwing that number out. 80% of the dwelling is 160,000. So when it comes time that there is a claim, they're gonna calculate and make sure that you had proper coverage. So if you're not paying enough in premium to cover properly, then it's gonna be adjusted differently and you won't get whole.
Okay, so when you hear these commercials for replacement costs, if my home burnt down from the roof to the foundation, and my policy covers, it says $440,000.
Okay.
Minus my $1,000 deductible. So the insurance company is going to write me a check for $439,000.
Actually, there's a possibility it could be more than that. But remember, you have to cover that amount, you might have to have that amount in coverage.
Right.
So if you have like $100,000, nobody don't wanna pay that large premium, then you're not gonna get enough money to rebuild your house. Also, there's some adjustments based on the fact that, you know, when you total out a house, are you gonna rebuild it? If you're not, then they don't have to give you that 400,000 either.
Oh, so that's,
There's a clause in there.
that's the clause, so if my house burned down, or somebody burnt it down, or I had it burnt down, I have to rebuild on that spot? Or-
You should be rebuilding right there. You should be. And I said that it could be more because you have your personal belongings, you have your furniture, like I had mentioned before, you've got computers, you've got, you name it. Your life is in that house, basically.
And you use another term, and again, I'm just asking questions as if I don't know, and I might not know.
That's okay.
But it's also for the listeners who are listening, who might not understand. What is premium? What?
Premium is the dollars you pay
Okay.
for your insurance. Thank you.
Yep, no, that's, I'm just answering a question here. So that's what I pay, let's say on a monthly, yearly basis.
Correct.
And a lot of individuals out here who still have mortgages on their home, in most cases, at least it was like this in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, there was an escrow account that was established, mandatory through the bank,
Right.
and homeowner's insurance came out of that escrow account, it was paid, okay? So escrow means,
That's just a set aside for the cost of your insurance and taxes
And
in
taxes.
some cases.
okay,
They wanna make sure that those things are paid, because remember, the bank, mortgage company, they've lent you the money for this. So if something happens to that house, they wanna make sure that it's gonna get paid.
now let's move on again quickly. Renter's insurance. I'm living in apartment X or at the 9, or this is, again, you're listening to Body Talk. We're in Cleveland, Ohio. Body Talk radio program on the No Static Network. Renter's insurance. What does renter's insurance cover? Does that cover the building or just?
No, the renter's insurance covers your personal property, clothes on your back, furniture that you brought into the apartment or house with you. And renter's policies, you wanna make sure that it has liability, because let's say you live on floor number 8, and, you went to sleep, and let's say that the tub ran over, and it damages the apartment underneath, it damages your apartment as well. You are responsible, and the word is liability there, you're liable for that.
Okay.
So, if you don't have liability insurance, that's your pocket.
So renters, I'm presuming, is much less expensive than home.
Absolutely.
Because you're just technically, besides the liability, covering your personal property.
Yep, what you pick up and carry with you.
Okay, so now let's go to this beast called auto insurance.
It is a beast.
Now, I'm financing a car, let's say. Do I have to have full coverage?
If you're financing a car, yes, you do. Because just like when you finance your home, the bank, mortgage company, or in this case, the finance company, they wanna make sure that they can rely on it to be paid if you go out here and have an accident and total it. So at the price of cars today, you got a $30,000, $40,000 car, you have an accident, you just came off the lot, you owe somebody $40,000. So yes, you need that full coverage to cover the physical damage, the vehicle itself, and we're gonna use the word liability again.
Okay.
Because in having that accident, you may have injured someone else, and that is your responsibility.
Now, and I'm just gonna use a number that's more frequently used for some people, especially if you're a homeowner. You hear terms like, for auto insurance, I want 100, 300, 100.
Okay.
All right. What does that 100, 300, 100 mean?
All right, so that is in reference to liability insurance, and remember I said that liability insurance covers what you are responsible for. that big number, that 300, that is saying that that is the most that they'll pay in any one accident. Those smaller numbers, that's the amount that they will pay any one individual in that same accident. But totally together, they won't pay out more than the 300,000.
And just real quick, because I'm young, I remember you would buy an car insurance policy for an entire year.
You
Now,
could.
now it's a 6-month policy.
Yeah.
Why the 6 month instead of the year?
So that can increase your premium. I'm sorry.
You're
but that's
listening
just
to
a
Body
fact.
Talk Radio program and Janet Williams. No, you're listening to Body Talk Radio program on the No Static Radio Network. If you have any comments or questions, you can call area code 216-939-5087, or you can email those same comments or questions to bodytalkradio@gmail.com. So let's go back to the auto insurance. And we always try to laugh.
But let me say something about that, though.
Sure.
And the premiums were based on a year. The payments came in so that you could actually afford it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then as time has gone on, the insurance companies got smart, and breaking that policy up into a half year, it actually does allow them to have the opportunity to increase your payment. There are some one-year policies still around.
Okay, well, I'm gonna make this the last question if we can. For families who automatically get this 16-year-old kid who drives, he or she gets their driver's license, and the family has 2 cars, okay? That child is assigned to 1 car, if I remember correctly. And that premium, the family, just the mom and dad, let's just say their 6-month premium was $600.
Okay.
Now, for both cars,
Okay.
$300 a piece.
That's a dream. Go ahead.
Well, you're on the.
We'll take
it
that.
can be
We'll take that.
We're just saying that. So all of a sudden, this kid gets his or her license. Now, 1 car is $1,000. Why is that?
Because that kid is inexperienced, so the possibility of an accident is much higher. There are so many factors that go into the premium. And here's one. If you have 1 policy and you have this young, experienced driver, the youngest, most inexperienced driver is gonna be rated on the highest car. So thus you end up with a premium that's looking like a house note.
Well, and let's assume Juniette graduates from high school, and we're in Cleveland, and they end up going to the University of Southern California.
Hooray.
Can I take that child off my insurance policy?
They're over 30 miles away.
So Janet
They're
is
they'll be listed,
okay.
but they're over 30 miles away because they're gonna come home hopefully at Christmas, summer.
Hopefully not.
But they're listed away,
And listed away.
so that gives you a break.
So the premium rolls back, let's say
Exactly.
for that 2.5, 3-month period while they're.
You also want them to be a good student.
There's what, they get a discount?
There's a discount for being a good student.
What other discounts might be out there?
Okay, so you said that on the auto policy, you can have a multi-car discount.
Okay.
Okay, you can also have these bundle discounts, and you have to watch those bundles because they're not always the wisest thing to do.
Now, when you say bundle,
Bundle means putting your homeowners and auto together, or your renters and auto together.
gotcha, okay. No, can I bundle my life, or does that count?
You know what, they tell you that it does, but not really.
Okay, all right, that's very.
And I'm saying that because I have multiple companies. And if you come in to see me, I'm gonna look at your home, I'm gonna look at your auto, and I'm gonna look at your life, and whatever company that says, okay, we can put it all together. And then I'm gonna compare it out separately. So it doesn't always come out that just putting it all together is cheaper under one.
Now, let's move on to health insurance.
Yes.
That's probably a discussion in the universe that's never gonna go away,
Correct.
never. So you mentioned Medicare. Medicare basically is for people who are what, 25 and older or 65 and older?
65 and over or disabled?
Or disabled. So I'm gonna use a term, can I be a dual?
Absolutely.
And a dual means what?
A dual, simply two, meaning Medicare and Medicaid.
Okay,
You'll hear the word Medi-Medi, meaning Medicare and Medicaid.
okay,
Dual, meaning you're covered by the Medicare, you're eligible because someone or either you have worked at least 10 years, doesn't have to be consecutive, but collectively 10 years you've paid in to Medicare, Social Security.
before we go back to the Medicare discussion, I think there's some confusion among some people, not everybody. What is the difference between a deductible and a copay?
Okay, a deductible is a set dollar amount that you're gonna pay. You said deductible and co-insurance.
No, copay,
Copay.
copay.
Okay, they both are very similar, but a policy can say that this is the deductible. This is what you're gonna pay out of your pocket before the policy starts to pay.
Okay,
A copay is gonna be based on whenever you use it. So when you go to your doctor, you might have a $5 copay, $10 copay. But the policy says you've got $1,000 deductible.
now you brought up a term that I was gonna ask you later, co-insurance.
Ah.
Okay. Co-insurance means
It's a percentage.
it's a percentage.
Uh-huh.
So that means I might have two different insurance forms, like Medi-Medi or Medicare and Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
One becomes, those are co, meaning two,
Dual.
dual. One becomes primary, one becomes secondary, all right? So in the Medicare, Medicaid, who's primary, who's secondary?
Medicare is primary
Okay,
when you become eligible for Medicare.
okay. So if I'm 65, not dual, healthy, not technically healthy, but healthy, can I have another co-insurance to supplement my Medicare benefit?
Can you have another insurance to supplement your Medicare?
Yes.
Yes, you can. You can have what's called a Medicare supplement, and it simply pays what Medicare approves and leaves behind.
Okay,
So, you go to the doctor, you see a specialist. That specialist is $500. Traditional Medicare says you pay 20%. That's $100. Your supplement will pick that up because it was approved by Medicare.
okay. So now let's take a soft stop here for a minute. There's this animal out here called Obamacare.
Affordable Care Act.
Okay, I prefer to call it the Affordable Care Act, not Obamacare. What was the benefit of the Affordable Care Act?
The benefit was, or is, that you can have insurance regardless of your health.
And can I sign up for the American Care Act at any time?
No. You
That's
have to have, there's an enrollment period for the Affordable Care Act, and that enrollment period is from November 1st through January 15th.
Okay, so let me just throw a softball, a
Come on.
curveball in here. I'm working, the plan or whatever closes. I'm not eligible for Medicare or
Now.
Medicaid.
Now you can get it.
So now I can get it.
Because you've had a special circumstance where you had coverage and you lost that coverage through no fault of your own.
So can I, under that circumstance, can I put my family, is there a family plan?
Yeah, you can actually do that.
Okay. See, I think a lot of people, and again, generalizing, don't know that the American Care Act offers a family plan. They think it's an individual insurance. Okay. So now we're talking to Janet Williams. She's an insurance broker. And the name of your brokerage firm is?
Pearl Insurance Group,
And where is it located?
301 Columbus Street, Bedford, Ohio.
And your phone number there?
440-232-9041.
And if I wanted to email you at your office, how would I do that?
You would email Janet@HarrellInsuranceGroup.com.
And how are you spelling Harrell?
Harrell.
And do you have a website I can visit?
I do, and right now, like I said, my Facebook page and my website are under construction. We're in the first quarter of the year, and I go through a whole thing where I look at what's going on, what I need to inform people about, and what changes need to be made. But we do have those sites available to us, and like I say, right now they're under construction. At the end of this month, feel free to just go at it.
Okay, you're listening to the Body Talk Radio program on the No Static Radio Network, and if you have any questions or comments, you can call area code 216-939-5087, or you can email your comments or questions to bodytalkradioprogram@gmail.com. Before we leave the insurance realm, there's one more product or item I want to discuss. What is this 529 program?
Okay. 529 is an investment vehicle that you can use if you want to help fund a child or grandchild for college.
Okay.
It has a tax savings benefit for you. So you can deduct the money that you're saving for that person. It's been around for quite a while. I don't think enough people take advantage of it. You can get them from the bank. You can set them up with myself, but I'm gonna be honest with you, because I'm working for you, I can get a ton of business from you if I give you some real good tips, right?
Right.
Okay. So I would tell a person to set it up through the state where they have it set up,
Okay.
that you can get it. Because if you get it from me, there's gonna be an extra charge built in. Seriously.
A commission charge.
Yeah.
Like a better term.
That's
Okay.
is built in, but that's because you got it from me. So you could save a few dollars.
On either way, and since you're zero commission, on either way, everybody, she's not zero commission, trust me. On either way, if I save $50, let's say a month,
Uh-huh.
in this 529 plan, am I gaining any interest?
You are. They range from 4 to 6% right now. But it's not a Christmas savings, so don't start something again that you can't afford to continue, because if you try to borrow from it, you're gonna pay a big penalty.
Now, is there an age limit? Let's say that my grandchildren or child, all of a sudden, they get this big academic scholarship.
Yeah.
And congratulations. So, but I decide I wanna go back to school.
You can actually use it.
So there's no age restriction on it?
It's not. Here's the thing. You set it up for your child or grandchild. They got the scholarship.
Mhm.
So there's ways that they still can use it. It might be for books. It could be for a place to live. It's gotta be, how do I wanna say? Because if you're on campus, there's a charge.
Right.
Okay, but they don't wanna live on campus. So you can actually take the money and pay for rent for them.
Oh, so it's just not limited, when I say academics, for the courses and or books. You can
Mhm.
actually pay for housing and,
All related to education.
all related.
Now, all fails and they don't need the money, you don't have to spend it on them, you can use it for yourself,
You're listening to the Body Talk Radio program on No Static
but for
Network,
education.
strictly for education. You're listening to Janet Williams, an insurance brokerage professional. All right, now, let's just, for a minute, wrap up the insurance discussion. I understand you're very active in your community, and you have an organization that you created and founded and created. What's the name of the organization?
Okay, I believe you're speaking of COSARO, and that's Cleveland, Ohio, Southeast Resident Organization.
Okay, and who benefits by this, or who can be a member of COSARO?
Anyone that lives on the southeast side of Cleveland. And when I'm saying southeast side, I'm speaking of Ward 1. I'm speaking of the contingent wards that are around it. Ward 1 has not always been just Ward 1.
Right.
It's been split, and it actually consists of, I want to say 3 or 4 former wards, like Ward 4, part of Ward 4, or old Ward 4, is part of Ward 1 now.
Correct.
Okay, so people that live close to it want to be involved, want to be informed, want to interact and reclaim the community, can be a part of it.
Now, what type of programs or functions does Kosero do or
Okay.
sponsor?
One of the things that we have coming up even this Saturday is called Coffee with Cops. There's a shortage of police, we know that, and we're not gonna get any soon. Coffee with Cops is something that we did last year. I think it was very favorable. Many people asked and inquired about it, so we're gonna do it 3 times this year. And it's where the 4th District, which is the largest geographic district, I believe, in the
It
city.
is 17 square miles.
So we get the opportunity to actually sit down and have coffee. Like somebody that comes to your door, knocks on the door, and you say, come on in, let's have coffee and talk. And that's what we do.
Now, from my understanding, there's a new district commander in the 4th.
There is, and he'll be there.
He'll be there, and his name is Commander
Brown.
Okay. Now, if the listeners aren't aware, especially if you listeners in Cleveland, as Janet pointed out, largest district in the city of Cleveland, 17 square miles. And it's, depending on what statistic and where you read the stats, it's the most dangerous district in the city of Cleveland. Now Janet mentioned the southeast side, which is Ward 1, or some people are affectionately calling it Ward 0 now. And that's known as the upper end. Okay. The crime is not bad, but it's not good
Right.
in the upper end. And it's good that Kosero does Coffee with Cops. And you also do this, chili cook-off?
Yes. We did our first annual chili cook-off last year in October. And it was an opportunity again for people to break bread, have a good time. So what you did was you brought your best pot of chili. You brought your, you listed your ingredients. You didn't tell us exactly like a pinch of salt or a cup of this or a cup of that, but you did list the ingredients. And that was so that someone's not ingesting something that they shouldn't have.
Correct. That's good.
But you judged the chili, and we had a fun time doing that. And then we gave out prizes. Now, we had the police actually participate, and they stacked the deck.
So they won?
They won. They were first place.
I wonder how that happened.
Well, they assured themselves more votes. It's
Oh,
just like politics, you
They
know.
actually responded to the chili cook-off. That was smart on their part. You're listening to the Body Talk radio program on the No Static Network. If you have any questions or comments, you can call area code 216-939-5087, or you can email them to bodytalkradioprogram@gmail.com. So let's go back to Kosero for a minute. How do I join if I live in that southeast side or the abutting adjacent wards?
Okay, so you simply would come to a meeting or contact myself. You can attend our meetings, fill out a little form. There's a membership, and that's just simply to support the things that we're doing, and we ask you to become involved.
Okay. Now, how can a person become involved besides just attending the meeting, eating the sandwiches or whatever?
Okay,
Taking bottled water and leaving.
all right.
What can a member get involved in?
Okay. You might want to get involved in, like we held political forums last year, because that is so important who we put in office to represent us. That's getting involved to be more educated and be more conscious of the decisions that you make. You may have some suggestion on like book discussions, but we're there to really bring the people out and together.
So the programs not only benefit the community, but it also has a dual purpose, going back to the insurance term, to bring people in the community together so that one, they get to know each other, because there's some common benefits, there's some common problems, there's some common solutions to certain
Absolutely.
things. Okay. Now you mentioned, and let's go back, you said you held a political forum, and that's for the candidates who are running for certain offices.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't, I'm not trying to pin you down, I'm not gonna use a name. If you look at the political landscape of Cleveland, where do you see Cleveland? Is it on the rise? Is it asleep?
Oh, boy.
Is it decaying? If you come up with another term, I'll let you use it, or I'll
I feel
edit
like
it
there's
out.
a curse on the city.
Okay.
I think there's a curse on Cuyahoga County. I really do. And I say that because Cleveland was once the 6th largest city in the nation.
Mhm.
How do you go from being the 6th largest to below 50? And how do you go, how does Columbus, which we used to call Cowtown, supersede us in almost every way?
Mm-hmm.
How does it happen?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the size of the city. Yes, we were once in the millions, and now we're about 370,000, if I remember. There was a recent article that came out. On the average, Cleveland is losing about 1,100 people a month. And they're actually, and this is based upon moving data from moving companies. That does not include whatever family might rent a U-Haul to leave everything behind and say, I'm just out. People are leaving Cleveland, going to Atlanta, Charlotte, and several locations or cities in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't have people moving into Cleveland. Now, one of to help you or answer your question, when manufacturing left Cleveland, that took away the middle class, I don't like to use the term lower middle class, or the people who didn't have professional education. Their jobs disappeared. You know, the steel mills, auto factories, or whatever. And Cleveland didn't retool itself to address that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, will Cleveland ever come back? Everything's cyclic. I'll probably miss that cycle, either
I
because,
agree.
because
I will.
of age.
I've
or
already
whatever.
come to that conclusion.
Oh yes, it's gone. See the other, and we'll talk about this real quick. When you look at Cleveland, you're seeing certain development occur. And the development that's occurring are primarily for younger people who, excuse the way I put this, who don't want to own stuff.
Yeah.
They're building apartments. If you want an apartment in Cleveland, you can get one
Absolutely.
rather quickly, but you can't find a home.
Right.
Because that one, the housing stock is old. And there's no acreage left technically to build new homes. So for the people who are older than I, who want to age in place, they can't sustain their property because, let's say, budgetary economic reasons.
Right.
So Cleveland, and I think the dynamics in Cleveland can change. The cycle can be shortened if you identify the right people to shorten the cycle.
Right.
So let's go back to Kosovo. Yeah. So you had this political forum. Now Kosovo doesn't endorse a specific candidate.
Correct. We don't endorse. We just bring the candidates to the people.
All right. And that's interesting. So how many, and I'm not gonna hold you to an exact number, is there high voter turnout in the Kosovo quote-unquote area?
You know, at one time, it was the highest voting area in the city.
Mhm.
In the city. And voting has just gone by the wayside, and it's a lot of voter apathy. I think that people vote emotionally. Oftentimes you'll hear people say that there's not good candidates. There's some good candidates, and there's some candidates that just shouldn't even be on the ballot. But I think that I know that we have to get away from emotional voting. Stop marrying candidates because you went to school with them, or that's Susie's son, or Susie's daughter. Because we're in dire straits. We need real people that can deal with real problems and get things on the right track.
And I agree with you. And just a very quick side comment. You know, there was, I can't remember who said it first. It's probably way before my time. You vote for the lesser or the better of two evils. So there's always a better candidate than, even if there's two people on the ballot, there's somebody even just a smidgen better than somebody else. So let's, before we wrap up, and speaking to Janet Williams, and you are a insurance broker
I am.
with your own brokerage firm. And where's your firm located?
301 Columbus Street, Bedford, Ohio, 44146.
And what's the name of your firm?
Harrell Insurance Group.
Okay, and how do you spell that?
Harrell.
And how do I get in touch with you via phone?
440-232-9041.
So, an insurance broker and community involved. So I'm gonna ask you a question before we wrap up here. It is Women's History Month. Who would be your Women's History person? And it doesn't have to be somebody who's whatever famous means today. It could be a relative, it could be your mom or whoever. Who would that person be?
It would have to be my mom, and behind her would have to be Mary McLeod.
Okay.
But
And how, and I'm not trying, I know your mother impacted your life some greatly. How did your mom impact your life?
I always say my mom was ahead of her time.
Okay.
If she were living this year, she would have been 100. My mother was of an entrepreneur spirit. She was a beautician. She had a shop. She had other beauticians in her shop. She went to school in Cincinnati, and that was like going away to college in her time. To get her license and insurance, if you will. It's just interesting that, you know, we have more years in education now than they did then. But that was like going away to get a college education. But she was so forward. And my mom and dad were together till death do them part. But she was a woman that drove herself any and everywhere. She drove women in our neighborhood any and everywhere and encouraged them to get a license so that they could have freedom, so to say, and encouraged them to begin to have their own bank accounts and things like that.
And you mentioned Mary McLeod.
Uh-huh.
And is that somebody local, or who is Mary McLeod?
Okay, Mary McLeod Bethune, educator, civil rights, and a whole lot of other things to women.
And if I remember, she actually created and established a college that's in Florida.
Yep.
In Daytona Beach, which is south of Jacksonville, straight down 95, make a left-hand turn before you get to the ocean. Two dynamic people, never met your mom, but I can, taking the liberty, just from sitting here with you and knowing you, you can tell, I know your mom because I know you. Obviously, I never met Mary Bethune. They do some recruiting down there. It's an excellent school. Had some football issues, but that's okay. Before we wrap up, and this is Janet Williams, our 12 noon, 1 o'clock guest on Body Talk Radio program, on No Static Radio Network. I always select one or two books written by Black authors. And the two books today, the reading list, the Black reading list. The book close to the oval photo is Black Life in Corporate America, Swimming in the Mainstream, written by George Davis and Clay Watson. If you are an African American male and or female working in white corporate America, I strongly suggest that text to you, and you keep it next to you in your desk, your cube, your briefcase, and you read it and treat it as a Bible with a small B. The Burgundy book, which I don't have the cover for anymore, is Why Should White Boys Have All the Fun? It was written by Reginald Lewis, everybody called him Reggie. Reggie was actually the first black billionaire in this country. Not millionaire, billionaire. Reggie originally is from Baltimore, grew up in projects. He was an outstanding athlete, won a football scholarship to Virginia State, which is an HBCU in Virginia. Reggie ran, did good, graduated, but he didn't know what he wanted to do with his life, but he knew he didn't want to go back to Baltimore, but he did. He returned to Baltimore, and one of his professors called him. This is way before cell phones, and he said, Harvard has a summer law program. You should apply. Reggie did. He was accepted off to Harvard. Cambridge he goes, law school, summer school. He knocks it out the park.
Okay.
He gets accepted into the full-time day program at Harvard Law. Straight A's, his first semester. Receives a note from the dean, come see me. I said, Reggie, you're doing great, but you have to take the LSAT.
Okay.
That's the law school acceptance program.
Mm-hmm.
Reggie said, why? I got all A's in the summer program. I got all A's in the first semester. He says, you have to take it. It's a requirement for you to attend and be admitted to law school. Excuse me. Reggie enrolls in the second semester. He did okay, straight A's, 1B. He gets another letter from the dean, take the LSAT. Reggie finishes law school. He graduates. He's the only student in the history of Harvard Law never to take the LSAT.
He did not take it.
He did not take it. Reggie, he went on to become a licensed attorney. He did M&A work, mergers and acquisitions. He created his own brokerage firm, doing M&A work primarily. He then went out and acquired Beatrice Foods
Okay.
by him freaking self.
Wow.
And when they were closing Beatrice, by this time Reggie had owned his own building in New York City. If I remember, it's 8 stories. As the different subsidiaries of Beatrice were closing, he was using that acquisition to fund the next one, until he bought Beatrice itself. And it had to be done, I think, if I remember correctly, let's say by 12 a.m. And he went floor to floor. He had different people working for him. He was hustling, you gotta close it, It closed, he bought it, and when he acquired Beatrice Foods, it came with a corporate jet.
Wow.
And he then involved his entire family in the corporation. And his half-brother, Fuqua, he was a tight end who played for the Dallas Cowboys. Outstanding football player, and he said, well, you can come here and work over the summer, all that good stuff. He said, but it's one thing I want you to do. You're gonna have to go back to school, finish your undergrad, and get your master's, and he did. Reggie died of brain cancer at a young age. But by this time, his 2 daughters, his wife, his half-brother, were in the business. And the business, he left a legacy. The business, Beatrice Foods, went to them. And
That's wonderful.
if you want to read a very inspiring and brilliant book about a black man, and Reggie's the author, about how he went about doing it, and he did. I would like to thank Janet Williams for being our guest on Body Talk on the No Stack Radio Network. And remember, this is a program where we encourage you to think, talk, and discuss. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you, Janet, for being here.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it.
All right, bye-bye. Yeah, we're up there. It's on the screen.
That was good.
Well, thank you.
I enjoyed it.
Well, for permit.
I didn't mean to laugh though when I said they did it so that the premiums can go up, but it's the truth.
No, it's I don't mind people laughing if it's true.
It's just literal.
Always be yourself.
Premium.
Always be yourself.
Yeah. Thank you so much for allowing me into your house.
We'd like to thank you for tuning in to Body Talk with your host, Ayl Bridges, here on the station where we don't bring no static, but we sure enough bring the noise, no static. Make sure you guys check us out on social media where we absolutely love to hear from you on Facebook.com/No Static Radio LLC, On Twitter at @NoStatic_radio. On Instagram at @TheReal_NoStatic_radio. And on YouTube at NoStatic_radio. Also, if you guys would like to listen to replays of this show and others on NoStaticRadio.net, please make sure you check us out on Mixler, Mixcloud.com. Just type in No Static Radio on the toolbar for replays of this show and others, and for continuous streaming. That means so refreshing. Just sit back and relax and wait for a little bit of buffer, and maybe one or two commercials, and boom, you got us on TuneIn.com, LiveOnlineRadio.net, and MediaQ for continuous streaming of this show and all others on the platform, and for all things on Static Radio, including up-and-coming events, merchandise, and an in-depth look at all our great show hosts here, please check out our website at www.nostaticradio.net. And thank you guys so much for being a part of the show. And you know what it is, stay tuned. Coming up later on this evening in the 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. hours, we've got the Reverend Doctor with today's Gospel Music Radio Show. But in the meantime, and in between time, you guys simply know what it is. We've got more music for your listening pleasure here on your Voice of the Revolution. NoStaticRadio.net, powered by Google, partnered with colors, and sponsored by Lamont Avenue Wines, the Cleveland Rugby League, and Hot Girls Gear. Thank you for listening. Sit back, relax. We got more to come. Have a good one. Enjoy the sunshine.